Hi there, this is Matt with State of Flux here with a review for Scream 7. This is a fully spoilerific review. If you've come to the wrong place and want my non-spoiler thoughts for Scream 7, they will be right here. But moving forward, we are going to get into the spoilers of Scream 7, and a lot of the minutiae of my criticisms for Scream 7 are in spoiler-laden territory. I think the biggest hurdle Scream 7 has is expectation and history. And this movie has been marred by controversies in and around its production, both with this specific film and the films that came before it, and who's maybe present in this movie and or not present in this movie, as well as people's history with this franchise as a whole coming into this movie and how they sort of softly advertised it or teased, and how the movie implements some of those teases might run people afoul, or certain fans afoul. I know specifically that they let news get out very early on in the production of this incarnation of Scream 7 of Matthew Lillard's return, and that comes with its own baggage based on prior incarnations of the Scream franchise. Now, there seems to be a very strong section of the Scream audience that wanted this franchise to be a StuDunIt. And I get it. Matthew Lillard not only is a fantastic actor, brimming with charisma, he steals the effing show in the original Scream. I did a whole deep dive into the original Scream, full analysis, and the one character we all talked about the most was Stu. You can watch that right here, and I encourage you to do so. But Matthew Lillard is absolutely phenomenal in that film. And yet, if you watch just the original trilogy, his character gets short shrift. Sure, he is the accomplice to Billy Loomis, but he isn't given equal status to Billy Loomis. Billy's the one that is talked about emphatically in the second one because of his mother. And in the third one, they don't even really mention Stu outside of find an accomplice in case you get caught. I think that's the only line reference to Stu, minus his little soundbite when she returns to fake Woodsboro. And Stu gets soft mentions, I think, in every installment of the franchise, but he doesn't get equal respect. And you saw a shift with the new released ones, the Radio Silence films, where there's a soft hint in Scream 5, if you, in a blink and you'll miss it, like on the computer screen, like tease of, is Stu alive? And then there's the whole conspiracy theory within Scream 6 that is repeated several times of, is Stu alive? This is something that fans have latched on to, and that is because of the production of Scream 3. Scream 3 had, in its original incarnation, its original treatment by Kevin Williamson, you were going to find out that Scream 1, Stu survived. And he was in prison and kind of orchestrating the events of a sort of network of Ghostface from a prison cell. And the ultimate reveal at the end of that movie was going to be a riff on the 1986 slasher film April Fool's Day, where you had the drama club of Woodsboro, who all kind of faked their deaths and lured Sidney out to Woodsboro High School as like hardcore emphatic fans of the Stab franchise, and then they all started rising after at the very end of the movie. And you were going to discover that they weren't dead. They'd orchestrated this thing on behalf of Stu. And this got abandoned because of Columbine. Columbine happened, and having student deaths in school was immediately thrown aside, and Wes Craven and the creatives behind Scream 3 ultimately transitioned it from a Woodsboro high school story into let's make a firm commentary on Hollywood and have it take place in Hollywood, and maybe expose some abusive, film producers. Anyway, but news of that came out around like 2000, 2002. I have a book that that was published on the definitive story of the Scream trilogy, published in about 2002, that detailed this whole storyline. And from then, it's been something that has spinballed in small, pockets of the internet until around 2008 or 9, when the TV show The Following came out by Kevin Williamson. And that base premise of that TV show is what Scream 3 was going to be. They just told the story without Stu or Ghostface. But that lingered, and the popularity of the Stu's Alive thing kind of snowball effect until you got to the 2020s, and they were openly talking about this. Matthew Lillard even talking about, is Stu alive and whatnot. Well, he was supposed to be, so therefore he is, kind of thing. And I think the whole fandom around is Stu alive is why this movie is the way it is. But the problem with the Scream franchise is it's based in sort of an unfiltered reality where everything happens and death has permanence, right? Like, there are ways you can maybe bring somebody back, and I think this franchise has even brought dead characters back in clever ways, as they did with Scream 3 and Randy, and some ways that kind of raise eyebrows of potential credulity of the credibility of that situation, as in Kirby and Scream 6, and then some also in Scream 3, like Sidney's mom, or the posthumous Billy visions that Sam has that kind of raise my eyebrows a little bit. But the section of the audience that really wants Stu to be alive, I never really understood. Yes, he's charismatic, but there's no way to bring that charisma of that character the way Matthew Lillard played him in that first movie into any other movie. That was unique to that time. If you watch his other performances, he's a great actor. He's genuinely a phenomenal actor. I think SLC Punks is, he gives one of the greatest performances of the 90s, full stop, in that movie. He's a truly great actor. But the energy he gives to each performance in every movie he does is kind of singular to that movie, and I don't think he can even recapture the Stu of 1996. And that was kind of proved positive a little bit in this film. I don't think Matthew Lillard gives a bad performance in this. I think he's quite good in this, but I don't think he's Stu 1996 in this. And so when his character first popped back up in this movie, as I had kind of known he was going to, because they sort of let that leak, I instantly full body braced and then cringed, because the performance just isn't congruent with Stu that we see in that original film. And it's not a bad Matthew Lillard performance, it's just not the Stu as I see him. And every single time he comes back in, he is there, and he does some great stuff. I like his, don't care. That moment made me laugh very, very hard. He's good, but the whole time I'm just like, this isn't Stu, and this is exactly why you don't bring this character back, on top of the fact that death has to have permanence, and this is not a franchise that follows the fucking killer. That is what separates Scream. It's a character-focused franchise, the unique character-focused franchise of the horror genre. Every other one focuses on the killers, and we've kind of gotten into a cycle from Scream 5, 6, and to some extent 7, where it stopped being character focused and started veering into the let's focus on the killer and bring the killer back. That's the one thing Scream does not and should not do, unless you can find a really clever way to do that, as in their original plans for Jill in Scream 4. That's a separate story, and I'll cover it sometime in my podcast. But that was my big, oh no, kind of thing. Yet this is what people seem to want. They don't want a WhoDunIt anymore, they want a StuDunIt. They want this character to come back and be the killer and be the Michael Myers of this franchise. But that's not what Scream is. And here is the one bit of meta-commentary Scream 7 actually offers. Scream 7 has been criticized kind of far and away by many people as being very anti-Scream, in the sense that it has no actual meta-commentary about the film industry. Well, that is, from one point of view, possibly true. I think it does have two pieces of meta-commentary that it's working with. I don't think it's as strong as some of the other films in the franchise, or even the 2020 films. But I think to say it says nothing is valueless. It does have two things it say. First, AI is bad, and it's AI is a tool that can be weaponized in a way to convince audiences out there that something is real when it ought not to be, and nothing good comes from it. And I think the movie kind of says that, like, pointedly, and its ability to confuse and harm is put on Front Street, and I love that the film is saying that. But it's also relatively hollow thing to say. I think the more interesting bit of commentary that this film makes is that Scream 2022 and Scream 6 started focusing heavily on the Ghostface of the franchise. If you look at even the marketing and the posters of the first 3 Scream films, Ghostface is nowhere to be seen. Ghostface is actually supposed to be called Father Death. Rose McGowan flippantly calls him Ghostface in the first movie, and that's the only time we hear the word Ghostface until the 4th movie. The costume is the Father Death costume in world. He's not Ghostface. Nobody should be calling it Ghostface or anything like that, because nobody was present when Rose McGowan died outside of Billy, who also died. So you look at those first 3 movies, who is on the marketing of those? The stars. The cast of people who possibly could have done it, and the survivors that accompany each film. Scream 4 is the first movie in the franchise that marketed with Ghostface in the knife, which was a reference to the original Halloween poster. And that's the first time that you get Ghostface both marketed with the film in its posters, as well as being called Ghostface. In Scream 5 and Scream 6 and Scream 7, the first posters released are all very ghostfacey. The little line, which is even referenced, the tagline to the 5th one, which is "It's always somebody you know," which is referenced in Scream 7, is the main tagline of that film. Ghostface became the marketing tool and not the characters. Now, I get why that is with 5. You're not having Gale, Sidney, and Dewey at center stage anymore. They are the supporting background. You have new characters, but you don't know if people are going to latch on to the new characters. Ghostface is how you market the movie. But Ghostface gains a reference with Scream 5, and along with that, you have Marissa Barrera's character being the daughter of Billy Loomis, and for the first time in the franchise, you have a killer return. And that killer, by the end of that movie, is giving, like, Sam, like, a smirk and a head nod of, like, legacy. And I didn't love that aspect of Scream 5. Scream 6 doubles down on that, and it's supposedly a, like, conversation about franchise, but what it really is a conversation of is, look at all the Ghostface that have come before and since, and who's going to be the new Ghostface now, and isn't Marissa Barrera, Sam Loomis or whatever, that is Sam Carpenter, that is she Ghostface, or she's descended from him, and like the Ghostface of it all became paramount to that story. And I think that's where this film's commentary comes into play. This one takes the costumes away and actually brings back some of the original ghost faces. We've already seen Billy Loomis, and we didn't need to see him here. I think we've milked the Loomis as much as we can. But you have Stu, which the audience loves, and they had already baked into the lore of 5 and 6 that this character might be back. And so they double down on that. But the problem when you do this is that it sends expectations to the audience that could be triggering one way or another. I'm going to touch on that in a minute, but I want to finish out this thought. Also returning is Laurie Metcalf as Mrs. Loomis, and Scott Foley as Sidney's brother Roman, and a brief return of Dewey that seemed oddly fumbled. Weirdly not present, especially given how important these two characters are, is I would have also moved mountains to include Mickey and Jill for two very important reasons. This whole film is built around Sidney's trust, and a huge component of that is that she can't trust anybody, and I think those two characters further exemplified that in her life. Jill is her own blood. This is her cousin. And the fact that she can't even trust her own cousin to not twist the proverbial knife in Sidney's side is a huge betrayal. But there's one that's more interesting, which is Mickey. It's shown in Scream 2 that Mickey and Sidney are friends and close friends, and she does seem to trust him briefly. But the betrayal she gets when he reveals himself to be the killer, and she has that line of Mickey, like, I should have known, I shouldn't have trusted you, but she did. I think what he does to her drives her into how she behaves in Scream 3 with her complete solitudinous. So I would have tried to include those two characters. Anyway, they bring back these characters. And that's the commentary that this film is trying to bring forth of, like, you want Ghostface to be front and center of these things. Let's show you what it looks like when we do bring them back, and then let's make this film's ultimate commentary, meta-commentary on the entire notion of that, being that the killer, played by Ethan Embry, literally saying, no, Stu is dead. That would be dumb. Because it is. That's not this franchise. That can be Halloween, and that can be Friday the 13th, and Terrifier, and any number of things where you have a returning killer. But that cannot be Scream. And I like that this film comes out and says that. It's not some bold acknowledgement of massive tropes within the franchise, and the meta-commentary is unique to the Scream franchise itself, but it's an important distinction to make. And so this whole long conversation that I just had is to get us to this point. I want to address the elephant in the room of, now that we know that it's not a StuDunIt, that it's a WhoDunIt, and who ultimately does this, this is the second time in a row that I have figured out who the killer is from the poster. I believe the second one I didn't figure it out from the poster, I figured it out from the first theatrical trailer, not the teaser, but the trailer. I figured out that Bailey was the killer from the trailer, because when they showed like the Ghostface shrine and you see the brief images of people walking through the shrine and all this memorabilia, I'm like, well, isn't he a cop? So Bailey's the only one that would have access to any of this like evidence, so he did it. And I remember telling my friend on the day that that trailer dropped for Scream 6 that Bailey is the killer. I'm sure there's somebody else, but it's him. And that same coworker of mine, shout out Keanu, he and I were putting up the poster for Scream 7, and I pulled myself out of any knowledge of this movie. I didn't want to know anything after they they leaked the Matthew Lillard thing like right away 2 years ago at this point. I was like, I don't want to know fucking anything. So I did nothing. I allowed myself to watch one trailer, the first teaser, and then that was it. I haven't seen even the final trailer for this film. But as I was putting up the poster, he comes up behind me and he's like, so who do you think did it? And I was like, well, assuming it's not Stu, because I think that would be dumb. I was looking and I was like, I'd say it's this guy, and I pointed to Ethan Embry, and I was like, he has the hairline of a serial killer. And like, I was kind of being flippant and joking, but he also looked like weirdly ominous in that poster, and I was like, he's clearly the killer. And then while I was watching the movie, I also figured out who one of the two other killers was. The Anna Camp one I suspected pretty strongly. So the killer reveal I thought was outrageously disappointing when I first saw it. And I thought the killer and their motive was easily the weakest of this entire franchise. Now, I will say I had an opportunity to rewatch that conclusion, and upon a second watch, my stance softened, and I'm able to follow the motivation of Anna Camp's character to some extent, and I kind of get it. And if you are saying that the importance of this story isn't who the killers are with Stu and Billy's mother and all that kind of stuff, then what are you saying the important thing is? Having that being tied directly to what this killer's motivation is, where she firmly believes in the final girl, the survivor of trauma, the meta play works a little bit stronger. It took me 2 watches, but I got there. I still think it is the weakest final act of any of the 7 Scream films. But I don't think it's bad, and I think they do some good character work in it for Sidney, and especially her daughter. Tatum and Sidney and their whole relationship is the best aspect of this movie. I said that in my main line review, and I stand by it. It is the good shit this movie has to offer. But I do want to continue to talk about some of the other negatives. The whole notion of the StuDunIt is going to alienate the audiences, because you're going to get people like me who, if they had even remotely considered actually having Stu be the killer, I would have hopped off the train and probably hated the movie. You are setting me up to be upset. And that's because I take this franchise seriously, and I take it at its word that when somebody is dead, they're going to be dead, especially if that character's been dead for 30 years. There's another camp, though, that really wanted him to be back, and they're going to be upset when you acknowledge that he is dead, and that they were lured into this film almost as if it was a trap on the pretense that Matthew Lillard is back, and he's not even the killer. You're going to feel used. And I think that's where some of the backlash to this film is. Now, I will say that either outcome, either Stu's back or Stu's not back, you're going to get people upset. But having heard what the plans were for the Marissa Barrera Scream 7, I don't know that we are in a worse world. Like, their plan for their 7th Scream sounds kind of crazy. A couple weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago, Skeet Ulrich let slip what the original plan was for the ending of that movie. And then both Christopher Landon in an interview about a year back and the Radio Silence Cats this past week all have been talking about their original plans for Scream 7, and it sounds like putting all 3 of their stories together, 4 of their stories, because Radio Silence is 2 people, putting all 4 of their stories together, it sounds like the original plan for Scream 7 in the books when Marissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega were planned was that Jenna Ortega was going to be killed off, likely in the opening scene as a catalyst to jumpstart the story, something that also I don't love because they teased that already with 5. She's my favorite character of the new Core 4. I think I would have been very upset with that. But then throughout the story, you would have gotten the killer trying to provoke Marissa Barrera into losing her mind and aligning herself with her family lineage, only to reveal that she was Ghostface, and Marissa Barrera was going to be the killer in Scream 7. Embrace Ghostface, and I've heard 2 conflicting reports. The Christopher Landon interview that Beyond the Mask had reported on had it that Marissa Barrera's Sam and Sidney have a showdown at the end of Scream 7 once she's revealed to be Ghostface. Or the Radio Silence people kind of alluded to the fact that she might be used as a Ghostface of Ghostfaces. But that's kind of a pointless character because you already have that with Kirby, who is an FBI agent who hunts down Ghostface. That's like her specialty. Yet her non-inclusion in this movie seems pretty weird because you'd think with a Sid-specific Ghostface event that she would have been all over it. And I guess who's to say she wasn't from behind the scenes, but it seemed weird that Kirby never showed up in this. Their lore is expanding to the point where there's inconsistencies that are growing more fiercely with each movie that is making me begin to like, maybe let's take a long pause on this franchise. But anyway, I don't know if I would have liked Scream 7 if Marissa Barrera had been the killer, especially given the ending of Scream 6 firmly saying, no, that's not her character's journey. And she is better than that. She is not her dad. Walking that back, I think it just doesn't make sense to me. So no matter what, I think maybe that movie would have been good. And it certainly would have made for an interesting and shocking twist. But we've seen I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025 doesn't always work, guys, doing the like most shocking twist. Sometimes the less interesting is the more logical conclusion and the right one. And I think we live in a world where Scream 7, this version, I think, plays better than Sam's the killer. All right. Mindy and Chad return in this. They don't have a ton to do, but I think Mindy particularly is used really well. I really liked their inclusion in this because it's a reference to Scream 2's original plan. The original leaked script for Scream 2 had Randy as the cameraman for Gale. And Dwayne was the film student. And when the script leaked, they reversed the roles. Randy became the film student, Dwayne became Gale's cameraman. But that's why, like, Randy dies in the news van. Like, all of that would have made a little more cohesive sense in the original, like, plan for Scream 2. So, in this being that they become Gale's, like, news entourage, I thought that was interesting. Familial fulfillment of an abandoned concept from an earlier draft of Scream, and I was all for it. I thought Mindy, this was my favorite use of Mindy in the 3 movies. She was just on effing point. Chad, having been stabbed 21 times or whatever in the previous 2 movies, seems just perfectly fine. And the fact that they both get mauled again in this film and then just show back up at the end just like for gigs and laughing and scratching is so weird, especially since this franchise has shown you the severity of surviving danger. Randy had that effed up scar in his from being shot in the chest and, you know, died from being stabbed multiple times. Dewey got stabbed once in the back and had the weird, like, limp and arm thing for most of the rest of his Scream journey in the Scream movies. Gale got effed up in Scream 6, and this film teases, like, how she's dealing with that. She's got a bum arm herself. But Chad and Mindy, they are perfectly fine. They have plot armor up the wazoo, but you know what? I'm a little here for it because I would have been genuinely sad if either of those characters had died. I think maybe we include them in the next one if that's the plan. But either let's not harm either of them. Let's do a Scream 3 with Dewey and just like let him pause that, or don't be afraid to actually kill one of these people, because at a certain point you have to do it, right? Yeah, I guess I want to discuss that. One of the other things that really irked me with this film is the opening scene and how it doesn't, like, it's a well executed scene. I think there's good, interesting use of lighting, a neat callback to the original Halloween, with like the visual of seeing the Ghostface mask in the background and then fading into obscurity and all that kind of stuff. It's suspenseful and it's well acted. I really like the girl particularly in that scene is pretty fantastic. But if you're looking at it from like, why did all of this happen, mapping what the killers are doing, that scene has nothing to do with anything. And outside of just like highlight that Stu's house and hint at Stu coming back, I don't really know why those 2 people were targeted and why people died, why that whole thing happened. Unless, was the killer's plan in this ultimately to frame Stu? Was it like that what they were planning? I don't think that was a good idea. I mean, I guess it's an option because so many people in this world, both in our real world and in this film landscape, seem to think that Stu might be alive. But, like, I feel like you could actually just exhume his body and discover that he is dead. So, anyway. I digress. That opening scene, I think, is also kind of the weakest one of the entire franchise of all the openings. But I think the biggest issue with both Scream 6 and Scream 7, they both have interesting, compelling, but kind of purposeless opening scenes. And they both have the 2 worst endings of the franchise. Both in their killer reveal and in their function. I think the larger issue is that both 5 and 6 don't feel like Scream movies in one key component, which is the thing that they are making commentary on isn't strong. Scream 1, slasher film, Scream 2, sequel, Scream 3, concluding a trilogy, Scream 4, remakes, Scream 5, legacy sequels, Scream 6, franchises, but Scream 2 was about deconstructing a sequel or a franchise. Randy even references franchises in that film. So there's that. And then Scream 6 does the ultimate by saying, fuck the movies. They go full Kylo Ren. They say, fuck the movies. And it's not about the commentary anymore. It's about the killer revenge. And this kind of continues that, where it really isn't about, it's a further embrace of fuck the movies. Sure, it's a commentary on the AI, and it's a commentary on how Ghostface, toxic nostalgia of Ghostface himself, or who's behind the mask. But neither of them have anything interesting to say about the filmic landscape, and I think that's the biggest issue with Screams 6 and 7. And I think that if this franchise moves forward and wants to even talk about movies at all, it needs to wait until it has something to say, and so that it can be one of the quote-unquote elevated horror movies in having anything to say. Now, if we don't do that, and we continue this franchise, like I said in my non-spoiler review, as a character-focused journey, we really need to focus on the characters. And I think that this film, this franchise, in episodes 5, 6, and 7, have provided us a good swath of characters to continue the journey with. Maybe we don't always have Sidney or Gale there every single time, but it's okay because now we also have Kirby, and we have Sam and Tara, Mindy and Chad, and now we have Tatum. And I am cool with this, and I like Mark as well. So the fact that we have characters to continue this journey with and splinter out, I'm fine with that. If we want to make this the main character like soap opera, I'm willing to see that franchise continue, because as long as it's about the characters and not about the Ghostface, sure, the mystery, the whodunit is important, but not the reverence of Ghostface himself. I'm content to continue on with these. And this is my MCU. I've been talking to you for like 40 minutes here because I care so much about the Scream franchise. This is my favorite film franchise. And even the lesser movies, like Scream 6 and Scream 3 and this film, I still put these on a pedestal above all of the brethren of the slasher landscape. I think that the worst Scream movies are better than basically any Halloween film that's not directed by John Carpenter. I think that they're better full stop than literally every Friday the 13th. And better than any of the Wes Craven, non-Wes Craven Nightmare on Elm Streets. I think they're better than any Saw movie or any other film in its like same kind of wheelhouse. The Scream movies have always been good, and as long as we can continue that trajectory, I will be content. But if we need to take a pause for a while so that we can find something interesting to say, I'm content with that too. This movie leaves us in a good place where Sidney gets to bond with her family and can maintain that like crucial notion that she can trust her husband and trust her children. And now we know that she can and has trusted Gale as well. And I think that is really sweet. There's a lot of great character moments in here. I love everything between Sidney and Gale. And I love how Dewey gets called into question. Didn't love his cameo, but I loved how he was called into question. In fact, when I heard Dewey was having a cameo, I thought they were going to do the Scream 3 box thing, and Gale was going to get a phone call from Dewey, but it was really Ghostface. Don't know why they didn't do that in Scream 6. Have no clue why they didn't do that here. Missed opportunity, guys. It's right there. I digress. Let's see. Do I have anything else that I'd like to say? This movie has been, shout out to Quan if you're watching, has been compared to Halloween Ends, and I do feel like there is a lot of Halloween Ends qualities in this film, but the actual qualities of that film, I think there are nuggets of that film that are quite good, but largely it's a terrible movie, arguably the worst of the Halloween franchise. I think some of that stuff can be applied at this movie. But what this movie does is it focuses so firmly in the positives of the characters that we are meant to connect with. And that really works for me. I think the Halloween Ends was just so negative for basically everybody. And nobody felt like they had an organic trajectory of how they got to that point in that film. I get how people are in this. And I like the at first, when the callback happened, right after the opening kills, and then it goes to the boyfriend crawling through the bedroom window, I was like, dude, we did this in 4 and 1, and this is a direct recreation of movie 1. I was like, I'm not on board with this. Oh my god, this movie is going to be a dumpster fire. And it wasn't. I actually really liked how they twisted that and how Sidney, as a parent, responds to this. And I liked how we got some really good character stuff, both with her perceived positives and failings as a parent, and how as a parent you never really know if what you're doing is right because you bring baggage with you from your own experience and apply it to your own child, and Sidney has quite the experiences behind her. And I like how her husband, Mark, calls her out on it. And all of this stuff, that's where it started really working with me. And anytime we were with those 3 characters, I was fully on board with this movie. And then when they started bringing back Gale and Mindy and Chad and all that stuff. I liked the friend group that Tatum had assembled around her, mostly because I like the actresses that portrayed them. I just want to one moment acknowledge McKenna Grace is a gift. She is such a great actress. She is just brimming with life, and like your eye just instantly goes towards her. She is fan-freaking-tastic. And she gets the coolest kill in this film. She is really great in the movie that shamefully underuses her, and that's a bummer because I think she would have been a great addition to the Scream ethos. They should have kept her in the movie either longer or whatever. I also think the tease of having the whole like school drama club in this movie further connected it to that abandoned Scream 3, and I was just waiting for all those kids to who were dying to like rise back up and show that they were all involved and stuff like that. Again, expectations is what really drags this film down. Though I think upon multiple rewatches, a lot of my criticisms are going to soften because I'll no longer be bringing my fears of them trying to recreate the original Scream 3 that never was, because I know that's not the trajectory this film goes. And so I'll be able to put that to rest. And most of my negatives on this film will soften in time. And what's left there is a movie that I think is undeniably suspenseful. I think some of the set pieces in this are the strongest in the franchise. The scene of attacking through the wall and the people under the stairs scene is incredibly strong. Sidney watching the camera and trying to guide her daughter to stop Ghostface and all that stuff. that stuff is incredibly strong. The whole race through the town and stuff, and I like how quaint and small this town feels, how insular it is, and how literally Sidney probably knows who the killer is because they're so tight-knit in how small town this is. It seemed very in line with the Neve Campbell, or Sidney from Scream 3. All of that stuff, like the killer set pieces in this, or the chase scene set pieces, are as good as the stuff you saw in Scream 2 and 6. And so I think I'll get to rewatch that without the baggage that Scream 6 has, which is the film blithely kills people, but none of them have names. Here, everybody has names. They have a character. They have like little bits that you can latch onto. So when they die, it matters and it means something. So I think this movie pulls away from my criticisms of Scream 6 with rewatch. So I like this movie. I still think it's a 3.5 out of 4 stars. I'm a fan of this franchise, so I am biased. What were your thoughts on Scream 6? Were you upset that they jerked you around with Stu? Were you upset with the ultimate killer reveal? I haven't even talked about Carl. When like you see his name on the cup, I was like, okay, so he's important for some reason. Is he going to be a red herring? But then 20 minutes later, when he's revealed to be the killer, in a scene that's great. I cheered when Gale ran him the fuck down, and then they unmasked him and stuff, and I'm like, oh, it's that guy. That's weird. And then I was like, did he really team up with Stu or something like that? That was strange. Anyway. Were you really that upset with the killer reveal? I kind of was upon first watch, but a second watch softened that quite a bit. I latched on to what her motivation was. I'm still not entirely clear on him outside of he was just like good at AI and wanted to do it. I don't know. It's still the weakest of the franchise in terms of that, the killer reveal. But I just love all the character work done with Sidney and Tatum and Gale, and Chad and Mindy. So anyway, I've rambled on far too long. You'll be able to come back to this about a year from now. I will have a podcast dedicated to Scream 7. Every other month I'm planning to do a Scream podcast, like my Halloween one, or as I mentioned in the very beginning of this, my Scream one. I will deep dive into each film. Anyway, let me know what you thought of Scream 7 in the comment area down below. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.